But my friend Toby came up to me, and this was about April probably, and said, I mean, just out of the blue, hey man, I got an idea. Let's go camping. And I'm like, what, are you nuts? We could sleep in your garage and eat bugs and get the same effect. Why drive somewhere and waste the gas? And he's like, no, think about it. He knew that I was an amateur photographer back then. Had a little dark room set up, but we both lived in NCO housing on the base. So there's not a lot that I could do with my camera on a nuclear base. Photography's frowned upon. And I wanted to go photograph some wildlife. And my friend Toby, this is interesting, and I really regret that I never pressed him on this issue to find out what the genesis of it was, but he was just absolutely ate up with the night sky. I mean, this kid could point out constellations. He could time satellites that would come over, and there weren't that many in 1977. He really loved this stuff. And, we never talked about that. I would like to have told him about the monkey men. I bet he was interested. I bet he was visited by something too, would be my guess. And, we drove down there in June of 77, had a $9 Kmart tent, some blow up air mattresses. Both of us were recently married, and our wives packed us a cooler full of stuff. I admit there was a series of missteps along the way getting down there, but I mean, it all worked out. And we got down there, and we didn't stay in the campground. We wanted to dodge the campground because the light pollution would ruin Toby's chance of looking at anything in the night sky. And there's not a lot of wildlife around a crowded campground. I mean, you got people to the right of you, people to the left of you. So we skipped the kiosk, didn't buy a camping permit, and we came across a chain in the road with this sternly worded, keep out, do not enter sign. And I thought we were going to have to turn around, and my buddy's like, no, I got this. He hops out of the car, and what the park rangers had done was take the end of that chain and just loop it around and padlock it, and they draped it over a nail of the opposing post. So, why have to fumble with keys if you don't have to? So he gets up and picks this thing up, drops it, and falls to the ground. And I mean, we felt like Lewis and Clark, we drove in and in my 66 Impala. And but what's interesting is that we could have made a dozen different turns left or right. And by chance, we drove straight to this plateau. And the plateau is still there. Did I send you pictures and stuff?
I've seen the pictures on my own accord on your Facebook.
Okay.
And I also did a Google Earthing of it to kind of get a better sense of the whole layout of Devil's Den.
My apologies for that. I'm usually more on the ball, but...
Oh, no. I'm the right guy to be talking to because I will go in and do Google Earth and look at it myself. And for those of you interested, I'll point you to Terry's Facebook page so that you can find your way there. It's really interesting. It's this elevated it's literally a plateau, an open field, and it looks like the perfect spot to set down if you're coming in from above.
Yeah, from a certain angle, it's almost triangular shape.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And there is no road. It's just dirt road that goes almost straight up. And I never bothered to look at Google Earth for this because I thought, you know what, that thing's covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now. No way is it still there. Well, I found out a couple things. That chain across the road, on the other side of that chain, we weren't even in Devil's Den State Park. That's land that's owned by the federal government, titled to the Bureau of Land Management, and leased to a private individual. But what's interesting is that when we were there, the the grass was cut. And somebody cuts that grass to this day. When I published the picture on Facebook, a guy I talked to regularly, who was a landscaper down in Alabama, sends me a message and says, "Hey man, those are tractor treads. I can blow this up and see them plainly." Somebody goes up there with a brush hog, which I guess is a big mower deck that you pull behind a farm tractor, goes up there and cuts that regularly. So I guess the question is, why would the federal government be interested in cutting grass on the top of a plateau in the middle of nowhere? That's a lot of gas to burn and a lot of wages to pay to some guy to do it over 50 years. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I feel like the Department of Interior is full of weird, questionable stuff like that, which I feel like in and of itself is a unique episode. But so you and Toby find your way to this plateau.
Yes.
You set up camp. How fast you set up camp?
It took a while. It took a while. We were in the car for 6.5 hours, and I wanted to stretch my legs. And Toby, being the more responsible one this time, says, no, let's set up camp now. And I'm like, no, I want to go for a hike. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I want to look around a little bit. So we took a hike, and that's a strange story in and of itself that I think I explained. Yeah, it's in Devil's Den. We took a hike, and we ended up, it was a hot day, and there was this cool limestone outcropping, and there were like a canopy of tree leaves over the thing. So it was a cool spot, temperature wise. And so we'd walk probably four miles, we were in great shape. And so we laid back, and I had a gallon milk jug full of water, and we split some of this water, and both of us fell asleep. Now, I don't get that to this day. I consider that really an episode of missing time that I'd like to be regressed and explore one of these days soon.
Yeah, I got that impression that might have been like sort of a preliminary thing of what's about to come.
I think so too. I'd love to know where we were, because I don't think we were in the park. Or in the Bureau of Land Management's land. So we woke up and it wasn't dark yet, but it was on its way to getting dark. So we kind of had to hustle to get back, and we hadn't set up anything yet. So we set up camp with it, in sunset. We set up camp, and we did a lot of the fun stuff you do when you camp, because it was all new to us, and it worked out mostly. And that night, early evening, 9 o'clock-ish, we are on these air mattresses, and we have a campfire in between us. And we're talking. We've already eaten. We're having a nice conversation. And I remember I remarked, I said, man, I can understand why people like this. This is very pleasant. And a few minutes later, I noticed that, and this sounds so cliche, Eric, I swear to God, it sounds like, but I swear to God, it's true. And I've had other people experience the same thing. And that is that the sounds of the forest, the crickets, the tree frogs, all the stuff that makes noise in the forest at night, stopped. And not only did the noise stop, but we had a little bit of a breeze going on, and that stopped too. So it was not only quiet, it was quiet and still. And it unnerved me. And I asked my friend, of course, like he's going to know, is this normal? Does this seem like awfully quiet all of a sudden? And he kind of just blows it off and says, yeah, we've been laughing and cutting up. Don't worry about the bugs. And kind of just was dismissive about it. Bugs will come back. Don't worry about the bugs. I'm like, all right. But I did. And the bugs never did come back. And a few minutes after that, my friend says, "Hey, Terry, were those lights there before?" And I'm like, "What lights? What are you talking about?" I couldn't see. His torso was in the way. It was blocking my view of that part of the horizon. So I had to stand up and take a step back. And on the western horizon, there was a triangle of three little stars and tightly packed. And they just looked artificial. They looked like lights, but they were too high off the ground to have been from a parking lot or a train. Um, and we thought maybe it's some kind of aircraft. We were familiar with aircraft. We didn't know any kind of aircraft that had that triangular configuration of lights. Because, if a plane is coming directly at you, sometimes they'll give the illusion it's not moving until it deviates its course by a degree or two. And then you can see, oh, yeah, the thing's moving. So we're watching it for a minute or two thinking that might be the case. But it didn't. And when it did move, what it did was it rotated like it were on an axis and rotated counterclockwise about 120 degrees and aligned itself where the base of the triangle was parallel with the horizon. And here's where things got really strange, and that is that our emotions to this were inappropriate. They were muted. I mean, we should have been like, "Whoa, you see what I'm seeing?" Validating each other's observation, and there should have been some kind of dialogue between us, and there really wasn't. And I felt, and my friend felt the same thing. I felt this wave of sedation wash over me. And I also felt mildly disinterested, believe it or not. I mean, I wouldn't say apathetic, but close. And it was, we were in a weird place. I mean, I felt more like I was an observer rather than I was a participant in this thing. So strange. And while we watched, this thing started to move up into the sky. It reached what I call a ceiling. I have no idea how high it was. Then it turned over. And then instead of three lights in a pyramid, in a triangle, we saw three lights in a line across with the center pointed in our direction. And it started like a glide plane down toward us. And it considerably dimmed the lights on each point of the triangle. And it came in over the forest, and we could see the treetops illuminate with this dark shadow in between. And it stopped about 3,000 feet over the meadow. I think that is a pretty good measure. I think that's where it was, about 3,000 feet over the meadow.
Before you continue, I think I would like to touch upon the inappropriate feelings, because I think the alien apathy, which you call it in the book, is that's a special sort of detail that seems to still exist today. And but then also the way this craft moves is exactly the way Bob Lazar describes these things moving. I don't know if you know who he is or have seen his interviews. He's the guy.
I know who he is. I mean, I know of him. I've never watched one of his interviews.
He describes in one of his films, one of the films that he's in, because he doesn't make films, but he describes the way the anti-gravity propulsion works is it kind of goes bottom first. So you would see it moving the way you describe it, where sort of the lower part would be parallel and you'd see the three lights coming, and those three lights coming towards you would be the bottom of the craft. And so it's like the bottom of a car. Somebody else described it as the bottom of a car. If it were to go up, it would move with its bottom going forward.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the way you're describing it, I'm like, that's how Bob Lazar describes these things as being able to move. So already there's this connectivity that's happening between your experience and what this guy who wants nothing to do with any of this stuff says that he witnessed, that he was asked to look at. All these crafts that are doing the exact same thing. And I'm just like, I'm really blown away by all that.
You know, I I wrote this book. I researched it in 2017 and wrote it in late 2017, published it March 10th of 2018. And I wrote it really as cathartic exercise more than anything else. I thought I'd maybe sell 100 books and have a box of 50 in my garage and it'd be out of my system and I'd feel better, And it's not how it worked out, but that's okay. I'm happy with it the way it is. But that alien apathy thing, when I wrote this stuff, I thought I was unique because I didn't watch UFO related shows on television. I watch very little television. We haven't had cable in 15 years. I don't read books on UFOs. I don't read science fiction. So when I published this book, I got emails by the tons of people saying, "Hey, I had this happen to me," or "Hey, I had that happen to me," just like you did. And it was kind of comforting in a way to learn that, my experience wasn't all that unique.